This week on Q&A, our guest is progressive radio talk show host Stephanie Miller.
Stephanie Miller, if your father saw you today, what would he think?
You're wondering how fast he's spinning? Is that what you're asking?
What would he think, though, based on his life? And most of the people seeing you right now probably don't even know who your father was. We'll get into that.
Funny you should mention it, Brian. My mom, my 86-year-old Republican mom, just visited me for Christmas, and she was nice enough to share with me that she thinks my father would be very disappointed in the fact that I've left the Republican Party, which is so nice to hear on Christmas. But I think she just wrote George Bush a letter about what a big fan she is and how many horrible things happened on his watch, apparently completely by accident, and how heroically he's dealt with it all.
Let's just, for those who don't know, and you do a talk show now and a comedian, all that stuff, let's just watch a clip that will remind some people and introduce some people to who your father was.
Okay.
I love the people of the United States of America. 200 million strong, devoted to God, consecrated to liberty, and all crusaders for justice, all crusaders for equality of opportunity for every person on the face of the earth. And on this point, I want the record unmistakably clear. I vastly admire and respect the courage, the integrity, the selfless commitment to principle of one of the most dynamic and forceful leaders in the nation's history, Senator Barry Goldwater of Indiana.
What were you thinking when you watched that?
Well, I was 3, so the landslide was not my fault, Brian. I hadn't said anything yet. But there's actually been a split in our family. My sisters are both big Obama supporters and, have voted Democratic, and my mom and my brother still pretty much Republican, I think. So it's been interesting, and I know that's happened in a lot of families, but what I tried to say to my mom is I said, we all disagree. My dad's been gone a long time now, Brian. He's been gone since '83. But I think what John Dean and a lot of people think, that this is not my dad and Goldwater's party anymore. I'm not even sure my dad would still be a Republican. It's hard, you can't speak for him. He's not here. But, my mom was saying, I think, Dad was such a loyal Republican, he'd be disappointed that why did you have to leave the Republican Party? And I said, well, because they don't stand for anything I believe in anymore. They don't stand for anything that Dad and Goldwater believed in anymore. So, even within our own family, there's a dispute over all that.
And he ran as the running mate for Barry Goldwater in 1964.
Right.
Have you gone back and researched any of that? Has that been of any interest to you?
Oh, yeah. I certainly, my sisters are almost 20 years older than I am, so they campaigned. My brother and I are same family. My parents clearly lost interest in each other for quite some time. But same. My brother and I are a couple years apart, but my sisters...
Is that your mom right there?
Yeah, that's my mommy.
And your sister's in there?
Those are my sisters, too. I was home, Brian, because I was incredibly ugly as a child, and I think that the landslide could have been worse had I been there. But anyway, it's interesting. I was saying that my sisters have, sort of changed politically, and so there is, like I say, just sort of this whole discussion in the family. But I think that, certainly a lot of people have said Barry Goldwater spoke out a lot against the Republican Party in the 80s on the Senate floor on how in the pocket they were of the religious right and how, he said a lot of things. They were fiscal conservatives. What would they have said about this deficit that George Bush is handing over?
You've spent a lot of your life having fun with comedy. Is there anybody else in your family that's like you?
Well, my dad was actually very funny. That clip didn't show it.
He was?
My dad was very funny. He was a great public speaker, and I think everybody has a great sense of humor. My mom, I think, is very funny. I think her letter to George Bush was inadvertently funny. I said to her, gosh, Mom, that was so classy of you. I couldn't disagree more, but I respect you writing the letter.
So, for those that have never seen you, and you used to be on television years ago, what do you do?
I still sneak on now and again. I mean, nothing to the level of being interviewed by Brian Lamb, but I do a lot of punditry, which is a word that means pulling things out of your butt. I'm a radio personality. I'm a national radio host.
When can someone hear you and where?
I air 9 to noon Eastern, 6 to 9 a.m. Pacific time. StephanieMiller.com is the place to find out, where it airs near you, or you can listen online or buy the podcast, or I'm on satellite network Sirius and XM. So
why do you do this?
Because I couldn't get a real job. And it's fun. It really is. It's interesting. One of my oldest friends said she thinks that, because I never planned this, I was going to be Carol Burnett, and then things went awry, and this is really not what I hoped for in my life, Brian, but this is what I've ended up. So, but I'm actually having a great time. And my friend was saying, it seems like everything that you do has sort of finally come together. It's sort of in your blood. I mean, I never planned on anything to do with politics, but it is sort of in my blood, I think, and my politics have now sort of combined with my comedy background to make this mess that sits before you today.
Were you ever a Republican?
I voted for Reagan when I was in college, but when I think you're at that age, my family's Republican, I'm a Republican, he seems nice. So, people say that, like, did my politics, was it a reaction to my father? And it really wasn't. I mean, it wasn't a conscious rebellion. I just, over time, like a lot of people, came to just not identify much with the Republican Party. I remember, dating back to Pat Buchanan's speech, I just thought, wow, when did this become such a mean-spirited, small tent kind of party? And, like I say, when you have Hillary Clinton on the campaign trail this year quoting Barry Goldwater about gays in the military, something's changed. The whole, you don't need to be straight, you just need to shoot straight. Well, that was Barry's line. I mean, who would have thought the Democratic, candidate for president was going to quote Barry Goldwater on the campaign trail?
One of the things somewhere in the biographical information on you is that your grandfather was a factory floor sweeper.
Wow, he was a janitor. That's what I love about my dad, is he really was a self-made man. And to me, that's not a partisan thing. He just was a great man. He came from nothing. His dad was a janitor. He didn't obviously come from money. His mom put him through college. She had a hat shop. So, especially when you look at the amount of money spent even this year on the presidential campaign. I mean, my dad was a prosecutor at Nuremberg. He was a congressman. He was chairman of the Republican Party, went on to be vice presidential candidate. And I've often said this, again, maybe it's not fair to speak for my father. I just don't think he would respect the kind of man George W. Bush is.
Go back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born right here in Washington, D.C. And then, but we moved to Lockport, New York, which is where my dad was a congressman when I was 3. So I don't remember D.C. much. So I grew up in right outside of Buffalo, New York.
And you've got how many sisters? One brother?
I have 2 sisters and 1 brother.
And they're the age difference between them?
Well, the sisters I was saying are almost 20 years older. And my brother and I are only a couple of years apart. So we almost had like 2 families, but same parents.
How important to your mother is it that your father was the running mate for Barry Goldwater, and what has she done over the years to stay up with that whole story?
She apparently watches a lot of the Fox News, Brian, which is quite upsetting to me. But because I think the political wives of that era, I also think maybe that's, do you know what I mean? They're almost programmed. I think there's a chip in the back of her Republican hairdo that she has to speak the party line. But she's very smart, and so we do have a spirited debate in our family, because again, half of us that just don't think my dad would agree with a lot of this, and my mom, who remains very loyal to the Republican Party.
You say that she lives in Charlotte and there's no affiliate there.
No, she could not be happier that my radio show does not air in Charlotte, so she doesn't have to explain things to her bridge club.
So she really doesn't listen to you?
No, she doesn't listen. She does see me on TV every now and again. Somebody in the bridge club will have seen something. And like the other day, I told her I was going to the McCain dinner here that Barack Obama was giving for John McCain. And she said, "Oh, dear, be nice to John McCain." So she's She mostly just has concern about, but she's very supportive. She actually is very proud of me. We just really disagree politically. She's very proud of my dad's legacy, as all of us are. So, we all have different ways of thinking how we should honor that legacy.
So you grew up in a small town in New
small
York?
town, 12 years hard time, Catholic school.
And
I'm an ex-Catholic girl gone wild, Brian.
Your father referred to the fact that this was a country devoted to God. And the impression is that you're not spending much time with religion these days.
Well, how dare you, Brian?
Not here,
I came from church.
I
came from church before I got here. My dad was a very religious man, very Catholic. And you know how I know he was? Because he never talked about it. That was one of the things, again, back then, they didn't use religion like the Republican Party has, I think, in recent years, to beat people over the head with and to claim moral values and to claim family values. And I think Barry Goldwater had a lot of concern about how in the pocket of the religious right the Republican Party had come. His famous quote was, I think every good Christian ought to kick Jerry Falwell right in the ass. Again, that's the other thing that started to distance me from the Republican Party. I consider myself religious. I believe in God. I just don't. I think that so many people felt like they had to reclaim their religion before we could reclaim this country, and I think we have. I think a lot of people did not like the way their religion was being used, and I think Barack Obama, that's part of the reason. He speaks very authentically, I think, about religion.
You were quoted as saying that Catholic schools make you raunchy and rebellious.
That's true. I'm not sure that's what they had planned. Sister Charles Bronson would probably still beat me with that big Board of Education if she knew how I turned out. But I think the statute of limitations has run out. When
did you leave New York? Where'd you go to college?
I went to University of Southern California.
Why did you pick that?
I got a football scholarship. No, C-SPAN doesn't fact check, do they? You don't know. I went to the theater department. They had a great theater department, and as I said, my original plan was to be Carol Burnett. So I thought I was off to a fabulous career in television. And up until this interview, that's been a big disappointment.
So what did you do after USC?
After USC, I started doing stand-up and radio. I actually fell into radio right out of college, kind of by accident. And I've been doing radio now, 25, 30 years.
You still do some stand-up comedy?
I still do. I do a lot of speaking. I do speaking and question and answer. It's kind of part stand-up, part political speech.
So what works with an audience and what doesn't work with an audience? When do you fall on your face?
Oh, Brian, never. Produce the tape to prove it. It's interesting. Now I mostly speak before audiences that invite me, so you have a cushion there, Brian. And I do a lot of, like I say, question and answer that's really more just what people are interested in talking about, what issues or things in politics or radio or television or the media that they're interested in. George Bush, I must say, has been pretty good material. The Barack Obama, great for the country, really the death of comedy, Brian, as we know it.
Well, I really wondered about that, whether or not things are going to get tougher for liberal talk show hosts. And by the way, would you rather be called a liberal or a progressive?
I don't care. I'm not afraid
What's the difference?
I'm not afraid of that liberal word.
What's the difference between
I don't know. I feel like Republicans succeeded in making liberal a dirty word. And so everyone went, we're progressive. But I'm like, I'm a liberal, so what? I think I briefly stunned Sean Hannity into submission once when he said, well, so you're a liberal. And I'm like, yes, and I'm proud of it. And then he was sort of stuck for a minute. He wasn't sure, if you reclaim, there was John F. Kennedy wrote a great thing about what it means to be a liberal. And, there's a lot of great ideas that came from, not all of them, but a lot of great ideas that came from liberal thought. So, I think, Brian, we've had a year when Colin Powell spoke very eloquently about why he's for Barack Obama. Well, what does liberal mean anymore?
What does it mean to you?
Well, I think it speaks to a lot of what Barack Obama has been speaking to, and that is an inclusiveness. When you talk about where's the comedy, well, the comedy is still on the Republican side because you still have a party that claims moral values and family values populated by the David Vitters and the Ted Haggards. And it's just, and besides the fact that they're so over the top in their rhetoric that now we're on defense. Apparently we're in the middle of the Obama recession after the Obama stock market crash. And apparently this Obama bailout is really going to be a bitch. And I'm like, what? He's not even president yet. This is the rhetoric that we've heard already, and he's not even in office. So, if you thought it was over the top, the rhetoric about him during the campaign, just wait.
So what does it mean, though, to you to be a liberal? Define the steps along the way that make you a liberal.
Oh my gosh, I think it's interesting. Barack Obama partially got elected on the power of we. He never said I. He quoted that we are the ones we've been waiting for. Yes, we can. And I think that's what people have been so thirsting for. And to me, that's what it means to be a liberal. Now, it's caring about everybody. It's really trying to bring everybody along. It's equality, regardless of your race or sex or gender or sexual orientation. I have to tell you, when I heard his speech at the 2004 convention, we have some gay friends in the red states, and we worship an awesome God in the blue states, and there's no red America, there's no white, blue America. I remember, I think I literally stopped breathing, Brian. I said, and I remember thinking, I said, this is our first black president. And I'm sure a lot of people thought it at that moment, but there is something that he embodies to me about what it means to be a liberal.
Go back again to the issues. What issues matter the most? What about it? He's been saying we have to increase the troops in Afghanistan. Why is it okay to increase the troops in Afghanistan but have to get out of Iraq? What's the difference?
Well, because, Brian, I could be wrong, but it seems to me even most military experts at this point, would agree that we took our eye off the ball in Afghanistan, did not finish the job to go into a completely unnecessary and, in my opinion, illegal war that, all of this kind of, the thing that annoys me most is this whole Bush legacy tour, and he kept us safe. It's like, what was 9/11 a gimme? Except for 9/11, which was the worst national security disaster in our history that happened on his watch, despite multiple warnings and presidential briefings. And, and the fact that we still didn't get those guys, that Osama bin Laden's still alive putting out tapes, we literally let him get away in Afghanistan, took our eye off the ball. We're already going into Iraq, which is, in my opinion, a complete disaster. So, clearly we have to get out of Iraq. I think everybody agrees that. Again, how or when or what is another debate, but I think Afghanistan has clearly, we don't have the guys that did this. That it's become a complete drug culture. I don't know that I would want to be Barack Obama. I think there was a great cartoon about what's changed. They said it used to be the only job a black man could get is cleaning up after white people. And it's true. You look at this economy, you look at Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's hard to imagine any president having left a bigger flaming pile of dog poo, politically speaking, for the next president.
I remember when George Bush came in, he had campaigned about no nation building. And then we got into Iraq, and then there's been the nation building. When Barack Obama ran and was elected, he campaigned saying, I'm going to be out of Iraq in 16 months. Will you hold him accountable to that if we're there for 32 months?
Well,
or do these things really matter? You just got rid of George Bush, and now you've got.
Oh, absolutely. I think we should hold President Obama accountable. However, I think he always said we need to get out as carefully as we got in carelessly, and I think he is correct. It is, like I say, it sometimes it sort of stuns me. It's hard to imagine, the breadth of what George Bush hath wrought and has left here, and what it's going to take. Would you want to fix this economy in Iraq? These two giant messes that this administration got us into? So
why do you think he wants the job?
It's too late to back out? I don't know. I think that he seems somebody that is, genuinely called to service. And I think he really, I saw a poll the other day. It was like 80% of Americans are optimistic about first of all, those are really high expectations, but I also think it really is amazing how many people are really rooting for him, that really believe he can do this, and because that's all we have right now is hope. We're all hope mongers now.
Let's go back to your career.
Must we?
Yes, we must. You've been a professional for 20 years at least?
Yeah.
So when was your first success? in anything?
I think this is it.
Right here, this day?
I think sharing this moment with you.
Coming out of college, when was your first success? You did.
I have to tell you, I wasn't nervous about this interview until someone said, a bunch of people said, Brian Lamb is interviewing you for an hour? They said, but Steph, you have no depth. There's no deep end in that pool.
You don't look nervous.
Oh boy. You know, it's interesting. I had my own late night show opposite Leno and Letterman in 1995, which was clearly a disastrous failure, or else you probably would have heard of it.
Where was it?
It was syndicated. It was you know, right after Arsenio and that sort of crop of late night hosts. But I thought it is interesting. Somebody said that one of my best quotes was, "It's amazing how much money you can make failing in this business." Because I've had a few failed TV shows, but I've somehow managed to cobble together a little career of some sort. And I think radio certainly has been the through line, but I have, you know, dabbled in television and, you know, will hopefully do some more. But I think there is a lot of, who knows what the combination of luck and talent and timing and all of that is.
What's harder, doing radio or television?
Oh boy, I think television, because I had to put fake eyelashes on for this, and that's, you know, there's glue on my eyes, Brian, for you. Yeah, I think radio, first of all, there's not as many people to screw it up, Brian. That's the thing. In television, there's a lot of people that are able to kind of micromanage, and a lot of cooks in the kitchen, whereas radio, by its nature, you kind of ask for forgiveness instead of permission. You're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, it's too late. So it's, I think, a lot freer creatively than television. Television can be great, as you know. Again, it just depends, or it can be a nightmare.
When you were here for the inauguration, you were a part of the Obama Radio Nation 2009, the Bill Press thing at George Washington. I want to run a clip of you and your sidekicks. Now, there are two of them.
Yes.
Jim Ward.
And Chris Lavoie.
And before we see this back and forth, how do they factor in your show?
I don't know what's in this clip because I was drunk at the time, Brian. But I'm going to say Jim Ward is a brilliant impressionist, and he does pretty much everybody.
Is he with you every day on the show?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Chris Lavoie is my executive producer, and he's also on air with me. And so it really is much more of a ensemble. It's not just me. It's a real conversation, and they basically prop me up. I'm a broken down old has-been, Brian, and they prop me up.
And you start this at 6 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
What time do you get up every day?
Well, we say that we get up at insane o'clock and we go to bed at stupid o'clock. But on the West Coast, that means to bed by 7 or so and up by 3 a.m.
And do you rehearse?
Oh, goodness, no.
You just let it happen?
Does this look like this requires any preparation at all?
Well, let's look. Let's watch you and Chris Lavoie and Jim Ward.
Oh gosh, George Bush, I just can't, I don't know what to do. I want every last pearl of his wisdom, don't you? You know, oh, Jim, you're gonna love this. You know who I met this morning at CNN and told that you have a giant crush on her? Is Dana Perino.
Oh, no.
Squeezy McFeel pants will do anybody, seriously. But yeah,
she's a really rotten liar, and it's so cute.
Oh.
The way she wrinkles her little nose when she's telling the lies. She's just adorable.
Oh. Men thinking with the little head again. When does that ever happen? Okay. But I want every last pearl of George Bush's wisdom. So here now, George W. Bush with his farewell address just for you.
Thought I saw the last of me, didn't you? It's a good run, wasn't it, America? 8 years of glorious peace and prosperity with not one single incident of giant radioactive lizards emerging from the Sea of Japan to attack Georgetown. You're welcome. Yes, there have been setbacks. There was the Clinton-Gore recession, which we inherited, bracketed by, or should I say baracketed by,
So that is not rehearsed?
No, well, you know, he obviously writes some of the bits that he does. He's the only one that does any preparation. But no, he writes his bit. I do a lot of preparation. I mean, I kid, as you know, I'm a kidder, Brian. But we actually, you know, when you do a news-based program, you actually never stop working. The thing most annoying to radio people is people go, "Oh, you only work 3 hours a day. That must be a great job," and then you strangle them, and then you bury their body in the desert, because we literally, the minute we get off the air, we have to start preparing. We're online, you know, we're watching cable, we're pulling, you know, sound bites for the next day. I'm, you know, pulling emails, I'm, you know, writing stuff and preparing. So yeah, it is a lot of preparation. And as you know, the news never stops, which I would prefer if they could stop for cocktail hour, but they won't. So I just, you know, we basically, you know, we read everything and prep. I don't rehearse or write what I say on the air, but I just, you know, I bring in obviously a bunch of news stories and we go topic to topic. But clearly you have to have read a lot, watched a lot, and prepared to know what you're talking about. But when we're in there, it's not written or rehearsed, except for Jim's bits, who, you know, he will prepare in advance.
Can you think back, how long has this radio show currently been on?
Oh gosh, we are in year 4 now of this current incarnation, you know, since progressive radio started, pretty much.
By the way, I saw another quote about the show. I thought you'd love this one. The Talkers magazine says you're the 36th most important talk show in America. How do you get that? 36th most important.
I don't. It seems like it's a little subjective, but I'll take it. It's
not 37, not 35,
no,
but 36.
36, which doesn't sound as good as we're number one. It's a little clunky, but you know, progressive radio, Brian, has only been out there 4 years or so. So, you know, right-wing radio, I mean, however you rank more important, Rush Limbaugh is on 600 stations. We're on maybe 60 stations in the whole country, you know, so we're just getting started. You know, right-wing radio has a 30-year infrastructure, so we are growing, but, you know, it is hard to obviously reach the same level of audience that people on 600 stations are reaching. So, you know, but we hope to get there. We certainly had a lot of success stories in a lot of markets, and we're growing.
Go back to Jim Ward. How do you know when you do one of these bits that it's not a flop, or better? How do you know when it succeeds, or does it matter?
Well, that's what we actually love, getting out of our little glass room occasionally and meeting people, because you don't. When you're in your home studio, you don't know if people are. So to get out and have people say, "Oh, I laughed," or "I drove off the road and got in a horrible accident," you're like, "Oh, good. Well, thank you." Because you don't know. That's what's nice about doing live events like that too, is clearly you can see, you know, we can get some audience reaction, whereas we're not used to. So that's the good thing about radio, is we don't really know if you're laughing, and we don't care.
So how important are the ratings, and how often do you look at them?
Oh, they're important. But we actually have a new system in radio now where it's almost like TV. You can see it every day, which is different for us. Normally, it's only every 3 months that you get a ratings book. So we're going to be as big a neurotic messes as you people in television now.
So when do you see them?
You know what? I don't look at them every day. We're only starting to get those in a few small, you know, in a few markets. And so I don't really want to know every day. I mean, I think you can only go in and do the best you can, and everybody has ups and downs in the ratings, as you know. It's some of that's very, you know, it depends on the signal in each market, the promotion that station gets. You know, in stations, in markets where we have a good signal and we get promoted, I mean, we actually can do very, very well, and we beat a lot of the right-wing shows, and you know, in those markets. You know, some cities, you know, we're not on good signals, or it doesn't get promotion, or it's, you know, so again, it varies.
So from when you're starting now to see some of the ratings on it, what can you think back that, that works right there?
Well,
give us an example of something.
I think entertainment always works. I think it doesn't matter what side of the, you know, political divide you're on. To me, I've always said, if the minute we think of liberal radio as a political movement, we're dead. It's entertainment. You have to be entertaining and get ratings and sell stuff. And, you know, I get a ton of calls and letters from right-wingers who love my show. It'll start off by saying, I don't, you know, agree with anything you say, but you're funny as hell, or whatever reason, or they hate you. Who cares why they're listening? They either hate you, they love you. But, I mean, the fact is, a lot of the liberal shows are beating a lot of the big right-wing shows head-to-head in a lot of markets. So that's the one thing that annoys us, is when the right wing keeps putting out there liberal radio has failed, because that is not true. They look at Air America's bankruptcy, which they're out of bankruptcy now, but of course they'll point to things like, oh, see, it doesn't work. And, you know, there have been some liberal shows that have failed. there have been a lot of conservative shows that have failed too. Again, entertainment is the bottom line. Is it entertaining? Is it getting ratings? And the fact is a lot of progressive shows are succeeding. Mine, Ed Schultz, Randy Rhoads, Tom Hartman, Rachel Maddow.
But you're not a part of Air America.
No, I'm not.
How is yours done?
My
The
show?
I know. How is it syndicated?
It's the best show ever. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Dial Global. Dial Global is a company that syndicates Ed Schultz and Bill Press and myself. But they also do Neil Bortz, and I think they're going to do Michael Smerconish. So they have, again, they're in the radio business. They're in the entertainment business. It's not about politics, about which side of the aisle you're on.
So underneath all of your humor, is there a serious approach to this politics stuff? Or, I mean, at what point do you sit around and have a serious discussion among your friends about politics? And at what point does it all become humor because you have to do that in order to be successful?
My show has been described as Senator Fart Joke. Senator Fart Joke. It's sort of like, the Flintstones background. So it is a little bit of both. But I do think that, they always say comedians are the truth tellers, but I do think that the things that are the truest are the funniest too. So it is a way, I think, of hopefully influence some people or affecting people. But you can't, if they think you're preaching at them, doesn't matter what side, again, of the aisle you're on, they don't want to hear people preaching at them on a soapbox. But I think if you can make them laugh, they may not realize they learned something or maybe changed a point of, maybe you want a harder remind because you made them laugh about something. So I think that the politics, I obviously am serious about it, and the whole show isn't jokes. I mean, a lot of times we have, serious discussions of the issues, but, there's also a lot of funny in politics. You know that.
What is your position on whether or not we need a fairness doctrine?
I don't, I don't believe we need the fairness doctrine, but I think that we need fairness. And Ed Schultz and John Podesta and I went and testified to the Democratic senators not too long ago about the fairness doctrine because they were getting our take on the radio business and all of that. John Podesta did a study, which we probably didn't need a study for, but that 90% of the talk radio in the country is right-wing. 9% is progressive. And I think, their basic point is, how is that fair in a country that is at least evenly divided or even more to the other side if you look at this last election? So I think they may be at some point asking these big radio companies, how is this fair? You can't use the talking point that liberal radio doesn't work because a lot of these shows are succeeding in these markets. Why are you we can't get on any more than 50, 60 stations. That's as many stations as there are in the country. So they're asking some of these big, companies, why do you have 600 conservative stations? So again, I don't think the fairness doctrine is the way to address it, but I think programming in the public interest is a way to go at it with these companies and say, look, and I've said this before, Brian, the airwaves don't belong to me or to Sean Hannity. They belong to the American people. And again, as long as it's a show that gets ratings, that, can sell stuff, why shouldn't there be more fairness in the radio business?
You're quoted somewhere saying they will put, talking about Clear Channel, the big owner of 1,200 radio stations, they will put anything on if it makes money. So is there a bit of this factor in the right-wing radio is successful because it's making money for them?
Well, yeah, Clear Channel, I will say, actually has been the biggest company that's gotten into progressive talk. So I know while some people, make them the boogeyman, they are in my home station in Los Angeles is a Clear Channel station. A lot of stations around the country that I'm on are Clear Channel stations. But I think what the new administration, or who knows, senators may be asking them is to take a look at the percentage. Because again, a lot of times too, we get put on the crappy signal, like the fourth station they have in the market. And you see what I mean, Brian? Then you can turn around and go, oh, we'll see, it doesn't work compared to we're not competing with the 50,000 watt heritage right-wing station that's been on for 25 years yet, but that's what we're also saying. Put us on some better signals, some better, better promotion. Give us the same chance that right-wing stations have. Because that's absolutely not true. That's not making money. There are a lot of stations that are making money. That being said, it's a tough economy for everybody. It's a tough time in the radio business for everybody. So
what is your sense that will the Democrats get behind the idea of reestablishing a fairness doctrine?
I don't think that's going to happen, Brian. There are some that have spoken of it and that may be for it, but what I'm saying is I don't think they have the numbers to bring back the fairness doctrine, nor do I think that's the right answer to it. But who knows? Maybe the threat of a fairness doctrine, if it does get, I mean, I don't know, if it does get that close, maybe enough to make companies take another look at this. I think ownership is the big thing too, Brian, is that, these, when we deregulated and all these few companies own all these stations, they have all the power. So that may be another thing to take a look at. Here's another short clip from yours and Jim Ward's performance at the Bill Press Obama Radiothon. Let's watch it first.
That was the best thing we ever had in California for entertainment, the California gubernatorial race, the debate between Arianna Huffington and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Do you remember? The one you needed like the UN headset for? Wasn't it the greatest? I'm about to understand why you say environmentalist and then you blah blah.
You have no idea what to do with the California. I broke my finger.
How is your governor in California doing?
Like most Republicans, not so good. But, it's interesting. He, to even survive politically in California, Brian, had to become, what's that word? A Democrat, essentially. Either if he ever wanted to have sex with Maria again, or just to be able to govern. Because he went sort of the way the rest of the Republican Party was going, taking a hard line and, calling teachers special interests and the, unions. And then the nurses and all those unions gave him kind of a political enema. And ever since then, he's been much more up the center, I would say.
But there's a lot of debt out there.
Oh, yeah.
How are you going to survive? You expect the federal government to help out?
I think the entire economic crisis could be solved by the sale of Obama tchotchkes. At this point, it seems to be the only business that's doing well. I think it is amazing. I'm wearing my Obama thong right now, Brian, just so you know. But I don't know.
Would you like to describe it, or is it?
I'll leave that to your imagination.
Are there, never mind. Getting in real trouble. You've got segments of your show, Right Wing World. What do you do?
That is where we play sound clips of right-wingers from the previous night on television, and then we mock them mercilessly behind their backs.
Do you get feedback from them?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I just had Alex Castellanos, who's I actually just ran into him, and I told him this, that we mock him mercilessly, and he came on the show this morning, which I thought was very brave of him. And I said, I like it much better when the soundbite talks back.
So in the end, both sides win on those kind of things.
Well, yeah, they know. I mean, first of all, they know it's promotion. We're obviously promoting all those people in shows, but it also is a way to, deconstruct what these talking points are from the other side, because it's hilarious. You literally see it, a Republican talking point went out, and it's like show after show. Here's the talking point. And so, we use that to mock them.
What's stand-up news?
Stand-up news is it's a general news of the day, and that's where Jim Ward will do a couple of bits, where he'll do his prepared bits. We'll take whatever news story is, a Bush press conference or whatever, and then he does the bit live, and as if it's a soundbite.
What does he have other work that he does besides your show?
Well, he's there. Oh yeah, he's a well-known voiceover artist, and does cartoons and voiceovers and all kinds of stuff. This is like his hobby, my show.
Where do you physically do it? Do you do it in a studio or do you do it at home?
I do it, in a studio at Clear Channel at my K-Talk, my station in Los Angeles. We do the show from there in Burbank.
Tinsel Talk, what's that segment?
Same kind of thing, but it's entertainment news, and Jim does a couple of bits in there that are entertainment or Hollywood news.
Celebrity Hotline.
Oh, that's just guests. We just call, whenever we have a celebrity guest on.
And how often are they political?
I would say probably 90% of the time, but particularly moving out of the election cycle now, I like to make it more general guests. I mean, we do have a lot of celebrity guests, Melissa Etheridge and Jason Alexander and Tim Robbins, and, but they also tended to be people that are also politically active, that are, but that happen to be Hollywood celebrities. But I think that, again, as we move out of the election cycle, we'll get more. I mean, a lot of my show is not about politics. It's about whatever people are talking about. It's about the plane landing in the Hudson, or the, entertainment news, or just general things going on. So, it's some politics, and as we go on, probably less so.
So you say that even though the show's 3 hours long, you spend a lot of time thinking about it, talking about it. If we were to, excuse the expression, follow you around during a 24-hour period, how much of that is spent thinking and working and talking about your radio show?
You would be bored to tears. I'm essentially an elderly shut-in at this point. I go from the radio studio, I go to the gym for an hour for my little spinning class, that's a little bicycle class, and then I go back home and I'm online immediately pulling stories for the next day, doing email, which I also use on air, watching the cable shows, take a little break for a hike with my dog, and then I'm back online and, reading and highlighting and watching. That's my life. And then I go to bed at 7.
And up at 3.
And up at 3.
And how much other work are you doing, like stand-up stuff and
Well, occasionally I'll do Larry King, or I do obviously a lot of cable shows, so I do occasionally do that in the early evening before. I was going to say cocktail hour, but actually I don't normally stop cocktail hour for those shows. I don't know if you need a good stiff drink to go on Fox News, so I normally just I don't let that interrupt my flow.
Tell us about the stalker. And is that a serious story or?
Which one?
Sock.
Sock, my right-wing death threat guy. May I just say, going on Fox News gets you the best hate mail ever. It's the most entertaining. Those are the ones I read on the air. And this guy he calls himself Sock. He's a retired insurance guy, and he sent a death threat to me after I went on Fox News. Something to the effect of wanting to shove an AK-47 up my glory hole, which was confusing, first of all, Brian, but second of all, I said, what kind of American are you that you want to put a Russian-made rifle up my... I mean, if you were really a patriot, you would want to shove an American rifle somewhere. But anyway, in what would be considered unwise by the FBI, I actually called him at home because he was nice enough to leave his number on the letter, so I actually called him live on the air, and just to ask what was up. What he was thinking exactly, and it turned into kind of an entertaining phone call and got a lot of press. And
did he talk to you?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But he denied that it was really a death threat, and I said, "Oh, so you meant that in a nice way?"
Did he go away eventually?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I think the authorities paid him a little visit, but no, it turns out you can never tell whether someone's actually dangerous. I think he turned out to just be a retired guy with too much time on his hands.
But
he was like, I know, I think I'll write to that liberal girl. And, it just was one of those things.
You have how often do you get the stalker?
Sadly, I inspire some degree of oddness, maybe because of my own intrinsic oddness, Brian. But you have to deal with some things occasionally. I think that particularly people that are on the way out like this, the Republicans have been, a lot of people on the fringes get a little crazy.
So where do you see them? Where do they pop up in your life?
I mean, you generally only in email or letters or whatever. So, it's not, it hasn't been an actual concern. But now that I've been on C-SPAN, I probably have to get some sort of full-time security detail. But from the Brian Lamb groupies alone.
Yeah, but they're
jealous with me for getting an hour with you.
You know that this happens a lot in this business, and how do you protect yourself?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't had any actual incidents of being actually stalked physically or being scared or whatever. You get a lot of those when I do events. I do get a lot of what Seinfeld would call close talkers, but it hasn't been any physical danger if you don't count halitosis.
Let me ask you about the Photoshop on your website.
Yes.
Explain what you do with that.
It's listeners send those in. It's Photoshop fun. They'll just take different pictures, normally of people in the Bush administration, and put them in unfortunate poses and unfortunate places. It's very immature and delightful.
Let me show you one that you have on your
Oops.
website right now.
Okay.
This has a cut line, I think, of baby blood.
Oh dear. Oh dear. I think someone mentioned, rather unkindly, Brian, that Cindy McCain resembles an alien in V. And so it might have been inspired by some discussion like that on the show. But the Stephanie Miller Show takes no responsibility for that of any kind.
But when I saw that on there, I remember when you were on stage at the Bill Press organization thing, that we had come from watching the HBO special where Barack Obama had asked for tolerance. And then we came to you all and we see things like this or comedy. I mean, where does this all stop? What is tolerant and what isn't? I mean, you have been, as you know, in your comedy, intolerant of the right wing. Right. And so why should they be tolerant of your stuff like that?
Well, but see, again, when you talk about Photoshop, again, I think people get that, like, for instance, callers to my show. I don't know if you guys do callers on shows here on C-SPAN. I mean, you can't take responsibility for what every caller says. It doesn't mean that you agree with that, or even Photoshop, when people submit things, you know, within the bounds of, obviously, any kind of reason, we put it up. But that doesn't mean we agree with everything that goes up on the website that a listener sends in or
Well,
calls
let's try
in.
another one here. This is Sarah Palin.
Oh, my goodness. And what is she doing now? I can't read the caption.
I can't read it either. So, but we see that you have Mr. Putin there, and a pig next to her.
She's protecting us from the giant floating Putin head that is sure to attack Alaska at some point.
Well, there is another one on there which we'll show next, which has it's a familiar one I know you've seen with Mr. Putin looking at Alaska. Here we go.
Come on, you have to admit, Sarah Palin gave us a lot of material, Caribou Barbie did. I coined Caribou Barbie, you know. I will take credit for that. She gave us a lot of material. I mean, you can't make up stuff. When Saturday Night Live can just do verbatim her Katie Couric interview and get huge laughs, what can you say about that? I mean, I think that's exactly the point. You asked a good question, Brian, about intolerance. And I think that, you know, I'm sorry, in my view, so much of the right has been intolerant of so many people. That's what I'm trying to make fun of. You know, in some ways, I mean, Sarah Palin was so divisive and partisan when she's saying Barack Obama pals around with terrorists, and you know, that's not divisiveness. And so I think that, you know, obviously with our comedy, and comedy can be a little rough and tumble. We're obviously trying to you're right, make fun of their intolerance.
Have you all sat around and talked about what you're going to do without George Bush?
You know, this is the big question everybody asks. But, you know, everybody said that, Brian, to Rush Limbaugh. Like, oh, what are you going to do now that Clinton's gone? You're going to be done. Well, like him or not, he's a great entertainer. He was fine. You know, it's the same thing. If you're an entertainer, you find things to be entertaining about. Again, you just go on defense. I was on the radio back in the Clinton years. I was the only one defending him, you know, and that was entertaining. But what's more entertaining than oral sex? But my point is, we had an entertaining show then. Hopefully we do now. Hopefully, you know, again, we're back on defense. A lot of what you're making fun of is the people attacking Barack Obama now. And it's not to say that we make fun of Democrats too. We make fun of everybody. I've often said that my show, and it's hard to do this, Brian, to come up with a show that theoretically appeals to absolutely nobody. Because I've often said we're too liberal for conservatives and we're too politically incorrect for liberals. So really, in a way, it's sort of a perfect plan.
So go back to time of day. You've done television late at night. You've done equal time on, what was that, CNBC?
CNBC,
And you did it with?
Babe Buchanan, who hated me with the heat of 1,000 white-hot suns. And in another story of magical unity, we actually had a lovely time together at the Republican convention. She came back on the radio show and was delightful to me.
Did she really hate you, or is this part of the shtick?
Oh, I think she did. I think time has dulled it now. But
why would she hate you?
Oh, so many reasons. She used to start every sentence with, once again, Stephanie, you're wrong. Let me explain the facts to you. And so it was sort of, we were a little bit of a mismatch. I was kind of doing The Tonight Show, and she was doing Crossfire, and so it was a little bit of a train wreck.
But a lot of people sitting outside this think it's all an act. That when you see people on the left and the right coming together, that they really basically go at each other on the show and then go have dinner together and say,
yeah,
wasn't that
no,
great?
with Bay and I, we actually, as I recall, the ratings went up like 60% because I think it's hard to fake that kind of hatred. It got a little personal. We actually, I did the show in Los Angeles and she did it in Washington. They actually separated us by 3,000 miles because it would have it would have degenerated into chair throwing.
But in all seriousness, does that make it better and easier to be at each other's throat by being separated? Being in separate studios?
I don't know. I think that was just the logistics of it at the time, too. I had a radio show in L.A., and that's where I could do it from, and they wanted me to do it, so, you know, we did it that way. But that being said, you know, I'm friends, sort of, with Sean Hannity, and I don't agree with anything he says or does, but, you know, we have sort of an unlikely friendship, so I think that it does work both ways. There's certainly people on the other side that you know, we can joke with and have fun with in between the breaks.
You know, one of the things that almost is never talked about during a campaign is what I would call kind of a contribution in kind. These radio shows end up being for President Obama, against him, for John McCain, against him. Isn't that, I mean, shouldn't you have to almost register with the Federal Election Commission sometimes when all these different shows get behind these candidates?
Well, yeah, I mean that's where they are talking about the fairness doctrine because because to me especially the right-wing radio has become really just an arm of the Republican Party. I mean, Sean Hannity just does Bush administration talking points that must have just been faxed to him. I always tell him he's really, really wrong about everything, and that's why God made him so pretty. But left-wing radio I think is more emblematic of the Democratic Party. That old saying about I'm not a member of an organized party, I'm a Democrat. I mean, we had a fissure even during the primary. Everybody, all our listeners, everybody hated each other because whoever was for Hillary or Obama, we can't even, you know what I mean? So I don't think there is, and I know a lot of the progressive hosts criticize the Senate Democrats for the whole Roland Burris thing and the handling of that, which was ridiculous. So I think we're a little more open to criticizing our own side.
Right now, who do you think has the most power in the media? And I mean organizations or individuals that have their own shows, but if you were to list them?
I would have said you before you agreed to this interview, but gosh, who has the most power? Well, it's interesting. I think certainly cable is and that's not a news story, is overtaking the network news, but I also think it's interesting how, along with the politics of the day, MSNBC's fortunes appear to be rising while Fox is falling. I mean, Fox is still obviously does well, but I think they're a little bit, we do a segment called What the Fox? On our show because they're a little scrambling for what to do now because they sort of are really out of step with the country politically. So that'll be interesting to see is what happens as we move into an actual Obama administration.
But who has, in your opinion, the most power? In other words, give us who do you look to and say, yeah, if that person...
Keith Olbermann, only because I want to marry him.
He is one of your future husbands?
Yes, he is one of my future husbands.
Single.
Yes, and I will have his children, so I'm going to say him because that will pay for our children's college fund.
Others? Do you have others?
Most powerful, wow.
Most important, where do you go? I mean, are there things that you think are myths about where you go?
Well, I mean, I think, I'll tell you who proved that this country does as Oprah says. It's Oprah Winfrey. Again, can you ever quantitate what effect she actually had in this election? But I said early on, listen, we do as Oprah tells us in America. So I think she certainly was a factor in this election.
Give us another one.
Oh my gosh, Rush Limbaugh. Still, I mean, whether you, again, like him or not, he's enormously influential. He's on a ton of radio stations. He's apparently pill-free, which good for him.
Another one.
Wow, most powerful.
Well, let me just for a moment, just New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, USA Today, all those, Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, I think New York Times continues to be the paper of record. I mean, despite them always saying, "Oh, this is such a the liberal media." It's like, what do you mean? The New York Times that printed Judy Miller was like the Bush administration stenographer on the weapons of mass destruction lies. I mean,
do you read them every day?
I don't read them necessarily every day, but I'm a huge fan of Frank Rich and Maureen Dowd, and so I certainly read the Sunday opinion stuff.
What do you read every day? I mean, in other words, where do you go to plug in every day?
You're doing those Katie Couric gotcha questions. You're asking me what I read every day.
Yeah, do you read every day?
Do Archie comics count?
Yes.
No, I read, it's interesting. The only thing about the newspaper business, as you know, in the daily news business, it's too late. The papers, I have to be online. So I pull all my news stuff from online. So it's too late. But for radio, by the time I get the paper the next day. But I do catch up with Newsweek and Time because they have more, in-depth stuff sometimes.
But what we're seeing is that the magazines are changing drastically. The newspapers, some of them aren't even going to be in business.
Right.
So
what's the joke? What's black and white and all over the newspaper business?
Do you go to the blogs?
Oh, I do. I check, again, talk radio is all about sort of what people are talking about. And you're right. That's mostly going to be on cable television, in the blogs, online. I mean, it's so that's because I think to me, that's the crux of what talk radio is about. It's what people are talking about. And you got to be talking about what people are actually talking about.
One of your progressive talk show hosts, Tom Hartman, makes a habit of having people on who he totally disagrees with. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good or bad? Do you do
I think
that?
it's great. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do the same thing. It's interesting. I think a lot of times the liberal audience reacts like, oh, we finally have some liberal radio. I got to get away from these people. Don't put these people on. But, I do think that it can be entertaining and it's good debate. I think, again, that's the nature of talk radio is I think you got to have debate. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to have people on from the other side. That being said, it's harder to get bookings when you're, just as it is, I'm sure, for the other side. It'll be interesting to see, Sean Hannity, when he was Hannity and Combs for years, like poor Alan Combs is like a potted plant while Sean got all the big interviews. But now, in terms of access, obviously the progressive hosts are going to have more access to certainly people in the Obama administration.
So how often does the family of William E. Miller get together as a family with your two sisters and your brother and your mother?
Well, we're all spread all over the country, so not all that often all together, but my mom just came and visited me for Christmas. My sister was here with me for the inauguration. My nephew came in for the inauguration. We sort of bits and pieces. I've got family in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in Lynchburg, Virginia, and
do your sisters listen to you? Does your brother listen to
you? Yeah. They, now that they're big communists like I am, yes, they love it.
Didn't your brother run as a Republican for Congress?
He did. He ran for my dad's old seat a couple of times, but he's not in politics anymore. So at
some point I saw him referred to as apolitical. Is that possible?
He says he's apolitical, and yet he tends to be able to recite Fox News talking points verbatim. It's eerie.
What about one of your sisters wrote a book in 2004?
Yes, wrote a book about my dad called Do You Know Me? My dad did the first American Express commercial. Do you know me? I can't get served I ran for vice president. I can't get served in restaurants. Did
that work by the way, did he get recognized in wherever he went?
Yes, he always said that you should do the TV commercial first and then run for vice president, because then he finally did get recognized.
So what is your goal? Besides getting off of this program, what is your goal?
Just having survived this interview,
what do you want to do, though? You want to do television again?
Yeah, I'd like to do some more. I love radio. I don't ever want to leave radio. When I die, I want them to prop me back up like Weekend at Steffi's and just play old tapes and pretend like I'm still there. But I would love to do some more television, as well. I've really been enjoying a lot of the political punditry and stuff I've been doing, and I would love a chance to do it full time again.
You can listen to you on XM 167?
Oh gosh, I don't know the number, but yes, XM and Sirius.
And if somebody wants to listen to you on the web, can they?
StephanieMiller.com.
Is it there when you're on, 6 a.m.?
Yes.
Can you get the archives?
Yes, 9 to noon Eastern, or you can buy the StephCast for only $4.95 a month if you buy a year in advance. Gling.
What do you get?
You get the podcast, the commercial-free podcast. You can listen whenever you want. So, yeah, a lot of people, it's interesting, the not being in a lot of cities, in terms of as many cities as Rush Limbaugh, has actually created much more of a demand for the podcast because people tell their friends and relatives in places that they don't air us. So
we're about out of time. Is there any last thing you'd like to say to our audience out there?
I love you, Brian Lamb.
Should we just end it right there?
I worship you like the news god that you are.
Thank you very much. Stephanie Miller, nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
For a DVD copy of this program, call 1-877-662-7726. For free transcripts or to give us your comments about this program, visit us at qna.org. Q&A programs are also available as C-SPAN podcasts.